Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me, and thank you so much for bearing with us with a little bit of technical difficulty getting up and running right now. We are bracing for some big storms here in Atlanta, so we're gonna say a little prayer that technology will be with us today. My name is Suzanne Burns, and I am just thrilled to join you today with our team from the Partnership for Southern Equity. And we are going to go ahead and get started. Um, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to meet our full team here in just a bit. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and hand you over to our founder and chief equity officer, Nathaniel Smith, who is going to greet us and set the stage a bit today for our exciting announcements about the launch of Just Communities and the new protocol. Nathaniel?
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm really appreciative of everyone taking the time to really become a part of something that I believe is going to be a huge milestone, not only for the organization, but also I think for our broader community. And what I'm referring to is the work that has been put in by our partners, as well as the Partnership with Southern Equity and Eco Districts, to really begin the process of dreaming a new way forward as it relates to land use and development, not only in domestically, but also in the world. And how can we really work collectively to advance what we call a just communities agenda? An agenda that is sensitive to the history of disinvestment, of the role that structural racism has played in influencing our built environment, an agenda that it begins the process of changing the conditions of communities in ways that will facilitate inclusion and opportunity for all. We know that historically, Black and Brown and historically disinvested communities have been harmed by our past as it relates to land use, as it relates to the investments of public dollars. In many occasions, the development has happened to communities, in particular Black and Brown and historically disinvested communities, and not with those communities. And in many ways, there have been many efforts to harm and to suck out the hope and economic prosperity that was found in many communities. How many stories have we heard where infrastructure was actually utilized to not create opportunities for communities to get to structures of opportunity, but were actually built on top of communities, bridges, streets, and other past harms? And so, we want to begin the process through Just Communities and our partners to right these wrongs, to begin the process of advancing an agenda that not only connects communities or makes communities more resilient and sustainable, but to begin the process of healing these communities from the harm of the past. And we can't do that without you. We can't do that without the engagement of communities who are willing to step forward and think of a new way forward. So, it is not by accident that we are hosting this launch um, during a time where we're celebrating a great leader, a person who sacrificed his life in order to move closer towards realizing the beloved community, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we could not think of a better time to honor his legacy and to launch Just Communities than to bring us all together and begin the process of moving forward collectively towards what he coined as the beloved community. And we hope that this launch will provide an opportunity for many and for others around the world who also are committed to realizing the beloved community to become a part of something that will honor not only his legacy, but also honor the people who have come before us, who are working and who continue to work for a more inclusive and just society. And so we have also, of course, we'll be showing and we have available our principles for Just Communities. We have communicated that before. We will be leveraging these principles as a guide or a compass for the work that we will be doing moving forward, as well as a manifesto for Just Communities that we have developed as well. And so, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your own personal and organizational commitment to moving towards the beloved community. And now I will pass it to Sade Batru, who is now on the line.
Good afternoon, everyone. My sincere apologies. I was having some technical difficulties, but I do want to just take a step back and give you all a big, warm Southern welcome on this beautiful Friday afternoon. It's probably Friday morning for some of you all. I am filled with excitement and gratitude that we have finally arrived at this moment, and that all 350 some of you are here with us at this moment. We've poured a lot of brain power and love into this. This is the official launch of Just Communities, the latest and greatest initiative of the Partnership for Southern Equity. So this is kind of our sip and see, if you all are familiar with that Southern tradition, when you bring your friends and family over to show your new baby while you're sipping on something. I wish we could send you all something to sip on while we share our new baby with you. And I know that many of you were part of the Eco Districts network. So old comers and newcomers alike, thank you for giving us a little bit of your time today. Before we have Rob jump into the presentation of the Just Communities model, I just wanted to give sort of a very high level breakdown of our two very important pillars of climate resilience and racial equity. So Nathaniel just kind of spoke to our core values because we really wanted to open up with that. That's sort of the why of why we do what we do. And so these two symbiotic pillars of climate resilience and racial equity are sort of the best articulation and organization of who we really are and what we really believe in, that we're sort of using as the foundation for the rest of the Just Communities model. And they are because we truly believe that they are foundational to our survival, and that they are inextricably linked, that all of the ways in which we experience racial injustice and disparities are also what causes us to experience all the ways that we're experiencing climate change, whether that's in our food system and our sewage system. And so that's just sort of a very high level overview of how we're taking this approach. And I also wanted to mention very quickly, if there's anybody from the media, I wanted to point to James Harvey, who's our communications manager. You can ding him in the chat and make an arrangement to talk to him after the webinar. And I think that is pretty much it. Just want to acknowledge my colleagues that are also here. You all heard from Nathaniel, Suzanne Burns, and Elaine head up our Just Growth portfolio, which is leading the Just Communities initiative. And then I am now going to pass it on to Rob Bennett, who many of you know as the founder of Eco Districts, was previously the executive director, and has come on to help us rebirth Eco Districts as Just Communities. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks today, and thank you, Nathaniel. For those of you who are on the call and have been with Eco Districts, welcome back. For all of our new friends and the PSC family, and those who are just tuning in for the first time, welcome to the launch of the Just Communities protocol today. It's such a pleasure to be part of this community of PSC, and for those who don't know, I live in Portland, Oregon. I've been a practicing sustainability and equitable development practitioner here in the Pacific Northwest for most of my career, but it's really wonderful that we have linked up with PSC and been acquired and have the power and the benefit and the wisdom that Nathaniel and his team have brought to the work. And that's really what I'm going to launch with and talk about today with the creation of the next generation of the protocol and of eco-districts. That we have been on a journey. We've been on a journey both as organizations, as professionals and practitioners, as advocates for many, many years. And there was a real intentionality of eco-districts coming inside of PSC and getting to the point where PSC's Just Growth work that Suzanne has been leading for some time, and the work that we did at eco-districts, coming together and bringing our experience and our wisdom and our networks to build something new. So the evolution of eco-districts is Just Communities. And I couldn't be more thrilled in working through this process with Nathaniel, who I first got to know when he very graciously chaired our host committee for the Eco-District Summit that we did in Atlanta in 2017. So we've been getting to know one another, and it was culminating today in the launch of the protocol. There's a lot of work behind this, and I have to start here with just a tremendous amount of people who have advised us, including this wonderful what we've called the Just Growth Advisory Council that came together in May for the first time of 2022 in Sweet Auburn and Atlanta, the birthplace of Martin Luther King and the home of Ebenezer Baptist Church, where he preached and where much of the civil rights movement was organized out of. We convened a group of national leaders, some who were former Eco-Districts board members and faculty and part of the PSC community, and a lot of others who have touched our work and who lead this work nationally, came together and started the process of unpacking the work that we've been doing and helping us move towards today's launch of the new Just Communities protocol. And so there's too many people to mention here, obviously, but hopefully many of you are on the line, and we couldn't have been here without you. And we will continue to lean on these folks who have not only provided their time and effort, but a lot of their sort of knowledge and lived experience. So thank you all. So today, Just Communities Protocol, it's the first relaunch, if you will, and the first iteration off of what was the original Eco-Districts protocol. And the original Eco-Districts protocol we launched at our conference in 2016 in Denver. And we then launched this certification and professional credentialing in 2017. So this is the first major overhaul, review process and redevelopment of the protocol in many years. And the acquisition into PSC gave us this great opportunity to not only look at the work that's come before us and the many practitioners who've used the protocol on many projects around the world and the 9 certified projects that we have in the US and South Africa, and to really kind of interrogate our work and to make sure that we were bringing the wisdom and the knowledge and the focus that PSC brings to the work into the fold. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes working through some of the highlights of this protocol, which is going to be coming live today, which you can download. And we'll talk a little bit towards the end when Suzanne jumps back to talk about next steps about the rollout of this work over the next couple months. So first and foremost, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Eco-Districts protocol and are just learning about Just Communities and our work, the protocol is the foundational element and the foundational component of what Just Communities is. And Just Communities is 3 things. It's one, it's a framework for fostering neighborhood equitable development and regeneration. So it's a tool and a framework that we've spent many years refining and have been promoting in the world as a way for the community and urban redevelopment industry in the community development practitioners and local advocates to have a clear framework for implementation at the neighborhood and district and community level. But it's also a rigorous standard, so we can work with those communities that are looking to become just communities certified, and work with them to become certified and to apply the framework in a rigorous way in which the work that they're doing is rigorous, it's transparent, and it's done in community as a way to contribute to the broader knowledge exchange and the movement of building better results in our community development practice. And finally, it's a learning platform for leadership. So it has a credentialing element that allows those who are interested in becoming proficient in advocating on behalf of the protocol to become a Just Communities AP, or Just Communities accredited practitioner. And this follows the same trajectory that we've been doing at Ecodistricts for years. And those of you who have been in the Ecodistricts family and our APs can continue to use that credential and move through the recredentialing process to becoming a Just Communities practitioner. There's many benefits that we think accrue for those who apply a rigorous approach and take the principles that both Sadeh and Nathaniel were talking about around justice in our land use development and infrastructure realms, and to put it into action in very targeted ways. So the Just Communities framework is a variety of things, but first and foremost, it's a comprehensive set of objectives and indicators and targets, and I'll get to that, to help clarify what we mean by success. It has a series of practical tools to support practitioners and advocates and resident leaders and developers in the field to move through the process of becoming a Just Community and applying the principles into practice. It has key resources and guidance around trends and baselining of conditions in your community. And ultimately, it rolls up with a number of resources within PSC to provide technical assistance to those of you in the field in the form of training in upcoming technical assistance programs that Suzanne will talk about. So there are some changes to the Ecodistricts protocol in the Just Communities protocol. It's not a radical departure, it's an evolution, because we recognize both the good work that the protocol has been promoting for years, but recognizing too that we wanted to make some improvements to clarify and strengthen the protocol. So some of the nomenclature is slightly different, and I'm going to work through that with you in the next few minutes. It still is formed around this this kind of continuum of introducing key topic areas, or what we call commitments, which I'll talk about, and then a phased approach to work or implementation that starts with groundwork and moves through 4 phases ultimately into implementation. So I'm going to touch base on all of these, and hopefully by the end, you'll have a better sense of how this is organized, how it differs from Ecodistricts protocol of the past. And feel free to put questions you may have in the Q&A. Suzanne is monitoring those, and we'll get to questions towards the end. So Sadeh mentioned the pillars of racial equity and climate resilience, and why they are the center of this work, and why we are grounded in Just Communities with these 2 key issues that we have to both grapple with and address in a more successful way in our community development. We do not need to go into the litany of the sort of the where we find ourselves and where we need to go. I think many of us know that we're not getting the results in our communities. The data shows this, whether it's lack of affordable housing, the amount of displacement that we experience, the increased level of segregations in many of our communities, regardless of decades of policies to try to reverse that, the environmental conditions that our communities are finding, and then the increasing pace of climate change wreaking tremendous havoc on communities, particularly Black and Brown and frontline communities. So we have centered the protocol in these 2 existential issues of our time. Now, this differs slightly from the protocol of the past, where we had what we called our imperatives, now we're calling our pillars. of equity, resilience, and climate protection. So we have integrated those and created more focus around those three into two of racial equity and climate resilience. So that's the key first of change to the protocol in the relaunch is a simplification and an integration more of these two key core issues into the protocol. So it's one thing to talk about, racial equity and climate resilience. It's another thing on how to apply it in a very practical and a very serious and a disciplined way. And that's what the framework is intended to do. We have what we're calling 5 commitment areas, and I'll get into some detail in a moment. These differ slightly in nomenclature from the Ecodistricts Protocol of the past, where we had 6 priority areas. So 6 to 5, we've tried to streamline. We have looked at all of the rating systems and toolkits that exist in the world, and we looked and talked to a lot of demographers and other scientists to really try to zero in on what we think the key issues of making good on resilient and equitable development, and packaging that in a way so that communities and developers and those of you on the line can really start to apply it. So we've got 5 areas, and I'll go through them. Again, many of these have been picked up and part of the Ecodistricts Protocol for years. The first is belonging. So each of these 5 commitment areas, much like the protocol in the past, are issue areas that we ask every community, everyone who picks up and wants to apply the protocol to apply. These are non-negotiable in our view. These are core issues that every community needs to grapple with. And that's what makes the protocol both comprehensive and quite rigorous. We're not taking in 1 or 2 issue areas. We are insisting that these intersectional issues must be addressed in a comprehensive way. And we start with the sense of belonging. One thing I think for those of you who have been under the hood of Ecodistricts for some time, no, we are not agnostic to what kind of neighborhood or community or district you're working in. We are not suggesting that success is a high density mixed use community, because that's not where we all live. Some of us are working in industrial areas. Some of us are working in exurban or high density urban areas. What this protocol does is provide a pathway for, regardless of the land use conditions and the sort of makeup of your community, to have that equitable and sustainable journey for your community. And so we start with not how many housing units or what success looks like from a built environment perspective. We start with the people. And so what makes up the sense of belonging and community that in many senses has been lost in many of our cities and communities? It starts with civic participation. It requires a range of housing access, not just affordable housing, not just mid-market and market. It requires a range of housing so that many different kinds of people, from seniors to those who need additional services to the most low-income citizens, can live with dignity within our communities. And then we have to recognize culture and identity, particularly in an era when our cities are changing and gentrification is often equated with erasure of culture and erasure of the celebrations and the history of places. Some of that history very powerful, some of it very dark and difficult. But we have to acknowledge, if we're going to do community development, people live here, culture and history remain. And we need to elevate that in our work. So we start with belonging. We move to economic opportunity and particularly upward mobility as the key driver of building wealth, and particularly in low income and Black and brown communities where economic stagnation has been unmoved for decades, and in some cases gone backwards. So we look at the neighborhood or district scale, and we look for opportunities to grow economic power, to grow inclusive wealth creation opportunities. And we've got 4 areas of entrepreneurialism and local economic development, education in the form of both professional education, but K through college as well, workforce and employment, and digital connectivity, recognizing that we are a connected world and the digital divide is quite real in many, many communities. So these are the 4 cornerstones, and each one of our commitments have a set of objectives. And then as you get deeper into the protocol, we have illustrative indicators and targets, potential targets to use. So we provide a lot of resources here to help communities that are looking to move. And again, each of these commitments we consider non-negotiable, but of course the objectives and the indicators and ultimately the targets that communities set are done locally, based on local context, based on community input and feedback. The commitments we view as non-negotiable, but this is absolutely a flexible framework. It has the same level of flexibility to honor and understand what happens locally is core. And so that level of flexibility continues with this system in its newest iteration. The third commitment area is well-being, joyful and healthy communities. And this is the intersection of active design and active living, public health and social determinants of health, where we focus in on physical activity and active living, in fostering physical, emotional, and psychological and social well-being and health, safety, recognizing that open space in parks, particularly safe open space in parks, safe crossings, etc., are critical to people's ability to thrive. And then food, and recognizing that local food access, the opportunity to do urban farming, but primarily having access to healthy, affordable food is core to our well-being. And we know there's a tremendous amount of work to do in this area. The fourth issue area is mobility. And this is where the intersection of active transportation, street network, multi-mobility, and the evolving transition to electric vehicles intersect. And recognizing again that we need all of this to work. We need the EV transition to both be equitable and functional in order for us to decarbonize our transportation sector. We need to still lean in on pedestrian, bicycling, and transit as the core form of mobility, with our private cars to be a distant fourth in that. But this again provides some guidance in each of these core mobility areas. And finally, what we had is 2 issue areas around issues of environment. We have combined into one in this latest iteration. And this picks up a lot of issues that the green building and the green infrastructure movement have been advocating for years, and really zeroing in on climate, energy, water, air quality, biodiversity and ecosystems health, and waste. And having, again, a clear set of expectations and inspirations around the commitments, and really committing, as the Ecodistricts Protocol has in the past, towards that net zero future, that decarbonized future, and how communities can get on that journey of installing heat pumps and EV infrastructure, and really working to decarbonize our communities, recognizing that it both has to be done, but we have to recognize the transition will take time and it has to be inclusive. So that's the commitment areas. And I want to now jump into the next part of the protocol, which has been the most, I think, has had the most work done in comparison to the Ecodistricts Protocol. This is where we've taken what was part of the certification handbook of the former Ecodistricts Protocol and really tried to make it much more user-friendly and much more kind of practical in its application. So the commitments become the kind of drivers where we identify key goals, objectives, ultimately performance targets. This is where the work gets done in 4 phases. What we're calling groundwork, which is a brand new phase, which is really recognizing that the pre-work with community, the identification of key projects that drive change in communities have to be documented, putting together a working group of folks who really want to work on this issue, and then doing some real listening and doing some real work with community has to be the prerequisite for moving into the more intense work of governance building in your neighborhood, building a strategic roadmap or a strategic plan, and then moving towards implementation. So I'm going to touch on all four very quickly. This section of the protocol, we have the protocol live today as a PDF, but we are going to convert this in the next couple months into an interactive website. So it'll be much more user-friendly and allow people to get into each one of these action areas. Here in the groundwork, the 5 action areas with key instructions, resources, templates, and tools that folks can use to start doing the work in community and with your development partners. So in the groundwork, we have 5 key issue areas. One is convening a working group. It's pretty obvious who's gonna lead this work, and particularly in the beginning, who's got the seed kernel? Is it a community activist? Is it a developer working with a public authority on a brownfield site? Is it a corporate or an institutional campus wanting to move forward with a master plan for their campus? That working group becomes the early group of stakeholders that lead this groundwork phase into preliminary scoping, listening and healing, very important step in which we recognize for us to go forward in this work, particularly working in communities that have been traumatized and displaced by gentrification and extractive real estate practices for decades. We can't move forward without recognizing where we've been and where people are at. So we really advocate a slowing down and doing some work in community to build storylines, to do oral histories, to convene and start to build the trust that's going to be required to do the work as we go forward. And ultimately mapping community assets and recognizing that change happens in communities mostly done to us, not knowing, and often done in sort of individual sort of silos of developers, of infrastructure providers, of city agencies. And it always always has a significant impact over time, but we've got to understand those projects and those programs and get a better beat on what's happening in our community. So that's groundwork. With governance, this is really similar in spirit to the Ecodistrict Protocol. We've been advocating for multi-sector community and partner governance, what we call collaborative governance, for years. We've been working this issue. We were inspired by the collective impact movement on this. And this is really unpacking and rebuilding models of governance that look different than traditional development models. This requires us to share power in a different way with our communities. And so this step, we advocate and provide guidance around doing a formal power analysis in your community to identify what are those both sort of known and somewhat unknown forms of soft and real power that dictate how development happens, starting to form a governing body that includes community, that includes the key stakeholders that have real estate and responsibilities and programs in the community, to formally build a community network to guide and shape the engagement with the community over time, recognizing that engagement is often done as a pro forma exercise. We want to formalize a network of leaders in the community that have a seat at the table of the governing body, and then ultimately crafting that community vision together with community. Moving into implementation, again, a lot of similarities to the Ecodistrict Protocol, but we've been a little clearer about some of the demographic and baselining that we want to see, so that it's a bit, frankly, a bit easier to understand. We call that get to know the community. And this is where we really dig into some of the demographic assessment in the community to understand, using the data sources that exist, but also trying to use more informal data sources, which are listening to people who live in the community and the wisdom that they have and their lived experience. So getting to know the community is not just looking at the demographics from the census. It's looking across the table at your neighbor and across the street, at the families you've been growing up with or you're getting to know, and you're trying to, through this work, elevate their stories and their information to create a better understanding of the issues that face the neighborhood, in order for us to set targets and to assess a range of opportunities and strategies, and ultimately the final step to build a work plan. And then the final step is implementation. And this is the ongoing implementation that in the former Eco Districts protocol, we sort of say for those communities after they were certified. But this is really about building the systems of taking that roadmap and that work plan and building into tracking progress metrics and requiring and understanding that over time, community development changes. People come and go. Organizations have leadership changes. The work plan will ultimately be modified based on funding. So this allows for that reality of long-term community development projects and urban redevelopment projects need to be modified as time goes on. And this step of implementation both builds the systems of transparent reporting to the community and to funders and stakeholders, but also the recognition of how do you model and ultimately update change to your work plan, to your governance, etc. Before I jump off and sort of hand it back to Suzanne, just a couple other elements. We do have certification for those who, as we always have, are wanting to take the protocol today and apply it in your community. Now, this can work on a variety of different neighborhood types. This could work in an existing neighborhood where you have a strong backbone organization, a community development corporation, for instance, and we've worked with some in Seattle, Capital Roots Housing, in Slavic Village, in Cleveland, their local community development corporation that anchors the work of working through the protocol. But this certification can be made available to anyone who's got a project of community scale. And that certification includes 3 phases of getting certified for your formation work. Most of this is what is in the groundwork that I mentioned. Then the formal certification where you submit your roadmap and your governance documents. And then that signals that a community is a just community, certified community. And we are now in partnership with that and building a community of practice together. And ultimately, those communities that want to keep their certification, there is a renewal phase, as there is in the former Eco Districts certification as well. And the certification includes online resources, templates, technical assistance from our team. And it is pretty similar to other certifications that those of you who have been involved in green building and WELL and others are familiar with. And finally, we have a great community of APs. Elaine was mentioned. She's running the show today. Thank you, Elaine. And the AP program will continue. It's going to emerge from Eco Districts, and we are rebranding it as a Just Communities AP for all of our existing APs that you can continue if you'd like to use your Eco Districts nomenclature, sort of historically, but we're encouraging everybody to move towards the Just Communities credentialing and branding that you would have that would come with that. And we are going to announce, the first course in a month for those who are either looking to renew your AP, if you've been in an Eco District AP in the past, or for those who are brand new and want to become credentialed. I'm so happy that over the 10 years I was at Eco Districts that we built a group of almost 850 practitioners from 40 states and 30 countries around the world who are APs. And it's just a wonderful community, and we want to grow that community. As Nathaniel said, this is a movement, and a movement is about people. And the Just Communities framework and protocol kind of is our bind and our bound together, as is our principles. But having a set of fellow travelers out in the world working on the projects and being part of our community is such a powerful thing, and something we're very grateful for. So I'm going to hand it over to Suzanne to close us off. It's been a wonderful process working with everyone at the PSA team, our advisors, and look forward to hearing from all of you after this presentation.
Thank you so much, Rob. Why don't we provide an opportunity for a couple of questions right now, and then I will sort of wrap us up with our call to action. So Rob, there were a couple of things that popped up in the Q&A. One that I think you could easily speak to around someone curious how the framework really addresses design. And I know this is something that has been a part of your thinking for a long time. You want to take a swing at that one?
Yeah, it really doesn't. It's pretty agnostic to urban design issues, specific that you would see obviously in a LEED or other rating systems and guidance. It really is about the process of promoting equitable and regenerative development. So the short answer is that it's not a design standard. It's a really a process management standard to help move communities through towards equitable and resilient outcomes.
Thank you. There was another that was referencing an earlier 2011 Eco Districts funding guide. So I could say that there are going to be a number of different work products that emerged this year as we roll out all the different dimensions of the new Just Communities initiative. So I'm personally not familiar with that particular document. I'm sure that Rob could speak to that, but I think our intention is definitely to provide as much guidance as we can in terms of really helping individuals and communities to get into implementation mode and to action. And we know that resources are essential to that. We will certainly be, well, I'll tee up in just a moment some of the things that we're moving forward with in terms of a call for folks to participate in pilot testing of the new protocol, which will absolutely be an opportunity that comes with some support in order to facilitate that, particularly for communities that may be lacking the resources to really dive in on this work. But Rob, was there anything you might want to say to the prior funding guide?
No.
Okay.
No. You covered it.
Okay. Another related question, what financial benefits may come with certification of projects? And this is something that that I know is a big looming question for folks who are looking at making a commitment to a body of work and are doing so, hoping that there's some sort of additional market preference for these communities in the future. So Rob, anything that you might want to add in terms of the past experience, and we can certainly just know that we intend to be using all of our capacities here at PSC in the years ahead to elevate the good work that's being done in Just Communities and to leverage our network of philanthropy partners across public and private sectors to help to support that work.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that question is about what's the return on investment, if they're asking, what the sort of value proposition of the protocol is. And, that's obviously a very difficult one to say specifically. You have to look at, the impact cumulatively of our communities and what it looks like to rebuild with equity and resilience in mind. But the short answer is it's complicated, excuse me. And as it relates to financial ROI, typically that is looked at when we start working through strategies in the roadmap. So a community might come up with a series of investment ideas, new program investments, or project and infrastructure. Those get costed, and the funding for that often lines up depending on the project to determine if it kind of comes into the roadmap or doesn't. Unfunded mandates are not a good idea, and that's not part of what the protocol is about. It's about getting really clear on what success looks like, what projects are wanting to be promoted, and projects particularly that do have funding. How do you leverage better success out of that? The good news is the world has changed as it relates to funding, and Nathaniel and others can speak to the J40 accelerator and the fact that we are now directing so much federal money into frontline and communities at risk from climate change. And there is a huge emphasis on funding streams that community-based organizations and others can take advantage of. That work is in progress. But if you don't have a plan, if you're not organized, the money's not going to come to you, because you're going to get kind of you know, but bypassed. So this is really about getting ready. I don't know if Nathaniel or Sadeh, you got additional things.
I do have a response. And I really appreciate that question. And I also appreciate your response, Rob, in terms of being prepared for the resources. But I would also add another layer to the response, and that is, while we're focusing on the benefit, or what are the benefits associated with advancing this agenda, I would encourage you all to think about what is the cost of not advancing this agenda. What is the cost of us allowing development to continue to occur the way that it is occurring in the communities that are being left behind? What is the cost of us continuing to allow collectively public finance to be used as a accelerator of displacement for communities of color in urban areas? So I would submit to you that the cost of us doing this same old is way more than a question about what are the benefits associated with moving down this path. Us expecting things to change and allowing the rules to remain the same cannot be acceptable at this particular point. We have to begin the process of changing the rules. And I believe that Just Communities allows us to do that collectively. We see various funding opportunities that are emerging that are more aligned with our values. And I will say that by really working collectively to lift up a unifying voice around what growth and development can look like, working on the ground with communities to position them to influence policy decision making in their local communities, I think can set the preconditions and eventually the conditions for the type of financial success or benefits that somebody may look for in participating in something like this. But I would also add, as I said before, I think the cost is too great for us not to move forward in a different way. And that is why I think the Just Community Protocol is really important at this particular point.
Thank you, Nathaniel. I wanted to point out real quickly, I think we're going to need to wrap up in the interest of time. And there were a few other questions that came up that we will make sure that we're recording, and we'll update the frequently asked questions section of the Just Communities website with the responses to some of these things. So please do check back with the site to get updates. Also, there are a lot of your colleagues here who have taken a moment to introduce themselves in the Q&A. We are trying to be very careful about not being vulnerable to hacks during a large webinar. And so I believe that the chat function was not enabled today, but the Q&A is live. If you would like to just throw your name out there, introduce yourself to this growing community, please do so through the Q&A function. And again, we'll make sure to capture this so that we can have your information. But I wanted to sort of transition us a little bit to the next steps. Where do we go from here? And want to make sure that you all are thinking about this not in a very sort of distanced professional way, but in a very personal one. And I wanted to share a personal sort of anecdote with you as I do this work. So 10 years ago, I served as the executive director of a small nonprofit called Sustainable Atlanta. We were working to advocate for the adoption of eco-districts in Atlanta. And I had the pleasure of working with Nathaniel Smith, who served on the board of directors for that organization. If you had told me then, 10 years ago, that in 2024, I would be many years into working with Nathaniel at the Partnership for Southern Equity, that PSE would be acquiring eco-districts, and that we would be taking this to a whole new level with a largely African-American staff of nearly 70 experts in health equity, youth power building, economic inclusion, energy equity, community organizing, equitable development, and land use, I would have said that is absolutely a dream. I wouldn't have believed it. And yet here we are today on the eve of Martin Luther King Jr. celebration weekend with a global audience who is here to be a part of this dream and be a part of this force for realizing Dr. King's vision. So I want to be really clear with you all that we're not coming to you today with a passive idea of a standard that is a check the box sort of download and apply and get a credential by your name and go through the technical steps to apply some work. This is very much the scaffolding for a movement and a call to action. This is working to realize that the places that we want to see that are centering people, love, and justice. And if the principles that we have articulated in the principles for just communities, which you all should see a link to in the chat. It is a link on our website that is a manifesto, and we're asking people to sign on to this. If you see these principles and values and they speak to you, then we invite you to get off the bench and engage. So this is, again, not a passive way to professionally take some ideas and develop them into your work. We want to see that for sure, but we really want you to become a part of this family. And so there's some clear next steps here. Again, sign the manifesto, go to that link, read these ideas and say, yes, I'm on board. I want to be a part of this community. Download the protocol. So you have a link that is in the chat as well right now. Hopefully you can all see it. That takes you to justcommunities.info/protocol. We ask that you just give us your name and download it and start to digest this beautiful body of work that so many people have contributed to, and start to imagine how you bring this into your world. We have a new AP training course that we will be offering up for the first time, February the 15th and 16th. We are going to do this for the first time via a live Zoom training. It'll be a little more than 3 hours a day, 2 days in a row. So it's not a minor commitment. We are going to be distributing the link to register for that training course on Monday to our AP community, particularly those who have been a part of the work of eco-districts in the past. We want to honor that commitment and give you a sort of early bird opportunity to register. It's going to have a limited class size, and so we want you to have a chance to jump into that class first, and we are going to be offering up a discount code for those folks to participate. We will be offering that training course in February and then 2 more times through the spring in that online Zoom format. And then we hit the road, and we look forward to hearing from you in learning places that you want to, communities that you want to be a part of this, and places where you feel like there is a concentration of people in my community who need to hear this. They need to be a part of this. And I want to host a live training in my community. And finally, we'll be translating this information into an asynchronous training opportunity that will be more self-directed, and that will be later, late second quarter, early third quarter part of the year. So stand by for that we want to create lots of opportunities for you to engage through the training curriculum to re-credential. We also want to be able to connect the dots more within that community to create opportunities for the new APs to come together, to learn. We will have an ongoing webinar series kicking off in March. We will have a new and refreshed website available this spring that will have opportunities for case studies, for getting to know your peers, for discussion groups, for really finding ways to connect and support each other. So please look forward to that, and thanks for your patience when we get some of those final pieces out to you. We'll make sure that everyone here today is copied on that. And last but not least, we will be rolling out opportunities to test this work in your community with funding support in as many cases as we can. And we are building the building the financial base for this so that we can provide that assistance and lower the barrier to entry for as many communities as possible, most particularly those communities who have been harmed by poor investments, poor infrastructure in the past, and seek a different future for your community. I think that I have touched on all of the critical next steps that we want you to join us in. Nathaniel, Rob, Sadeh, anyone want to jump in with anything I missed?
No, I think you've done a great job, Suzanne. And again, just thank you everyone for allowing us to introduce Just Communities to you all. You know, I'm definitely looking forward to getting to know you all and working with you all. You know, this is a global movement. I know we have people on the call from Kenya, from Canada, and other places around the world. You are a part of this movement as well, and we just look forward to supporting your efforts and stay tuned. We have a lot of exciting things in the hopper, and we just look forward to working with you to realize the beloved community. And thanks again.